In just one moment, a waitress destroyed her own future. With a single careless act, she drenched a man sitting quietly in a wheelchair. Ice water cascaded down his chest, soaking the jacket he wore with quiet dignity. She smirked, leaned close, and whispered words that froze the entire room. "People like you don't belong here." She thought she was humiliating a man who couldn't fight back. What she didn't know was that she had just humiliated the husband of the most powerful woman in the city. His name was Elijah Ward. Architect, advocate, a man who lived his life quietly, refusing to let his wheelchair define him. He wasn't wealthy in appearance, but his work built half the spaces this community used every single day. Schools, offices, public spaces, places people took for granted, until someone like him showed them what was missing. All he wanted that night was a meal and peace. Nothing more. But humiliation has consequences. And this act would ignite a chain reaction that tore through businesses, exposed hidden power, and forced an entire city to ask, who is really in control here? Elijah Ward was not alone. Outside, sitting in that waiting SUV, was May Ward, his wife. To the public, she was a philanthropist, a CEO, a woman celebrated for building hospitals, donating to schools, and funding programs that kept thousands afloat. Her picture hung in lobbies. Her name was carved on plaques of marble. But those who knew better understood that May Ward was more than just a businesswoman. She was a force, and a force with reach. Through city politics, through real estate, through security firms and businesses too vast to count. She was the one person in this city you never crossed lightly. And that night, she had just been given a reason to act. Her name was Cara Doyle, 29 years old, a single mother, buried in debt. Every week, she worked long shifts in a restaurant where the cost of one meal equaled her entire paycheck. Every day she watched wealthy diners laugh, order, tip casually, amounts she couldn't dream of saving. And slowly, something dark took root. Resentment, bitterness, a constant gnawing voice that told her she didn't matter, that she was invisible, that the only way to feel in control was to make someone else feel small. That night, Elijah became her target. In that whisper lived centuries of contempt. It was not loud. It did not need to be. Spoken with a smirk, carried on a pitcher of ice water, it silenced the room more than a shout ever could. She thought it would vanish the moment he left, forgotten as quickly as spilled water on tile. But humiliation is never that small. It leaves a mark. And sometimes, that mark spreads further than anyone expects. Because Elijah wasn't just another man in a wheelchair. He was May Ward's husband. And Cara Doyle hadn't humiliated a stranger. She had humiliated a family whose reach extended into every corner of the city. 7 minutes. That's all it took for humiliation to become a reckoning. 7 minutes for whispers to turn into phone calls. For phone calls to become orders. And for orders to become consequences no one could escape. In those 7 minutes, a waitress's smirk became the most expensive mistake of her life. A restaurant collapsed. Secrets were dragged into daylight. And a city learned that power is rarely where it appears to be. Stay with us until the very end. Because the decision that followed didn't just shock a restaurant staff. It shocked a courtroom. It shook a city. And it left everyone asking the same question. Was this justice or something else entirely? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. 7 minutes. That was the gap between humiliation and consequences. Moments between the smirk of a waitress and the beginning of a reckoning that would ripple far beyond a single dining room. But before those minutes run out, before the final move is made, there are questions we have to ask. Questions that cut deeper than one moment of cruelty. Who really controls this neighborhood? Why was Elijah Ward targeted? And what did Cara Doyle think would happen, compared to what actually did? Elijah was not just another diner. To the casual eye, he was a quiet man in a wheelchair, eating alone. But beneath that simplicity lay a career that shaped skylines. He was the one who made sure the buildings you work in, the schools your children attend, the sidewalks you walk were open to all. He found violations, demanded fixes, and in doing so, he made enemies. Some called him a watchdog. Others called him a thorn in their side. And Cara Doyle? She didn't see any of that. She didn't care to. All she saw was a customer who looked like he didn't belong, in a place she herself only occupied because she wore an apron. She thought she could diminish him and walk away unchanged. She believed cruelty would be invisible. She believed no one of importance was watching. But power is rarely where it seems. This block, this neighborhood, this very restaurant, none of it floated free. Threads of ownership wound through corporations, investors, names hidden behind shell companies. And if you tugged on any of those threads long enough, they led back to one woman, May Ward. To the city, May was a philanthropist, a leader, a woman whose name was carved on the walls of hospitals, schools, and libraries. A CEO who commanded respect in every boardroom she entered. But beneath the philanthropy was something harder. An iron hand cloaked in silk. May Ward wasn't just visible power. She was the invisible gravity that held the neighborhood together. People thought May wasn't inside that night. But they were wrong. She was already inside, not seated at a table, not holding a menu, but inside the businesses, the policies, the very veins of the city itself. She didn't need to step through the door. She already owned the floor it stood on. Kara Doyle, standing over a soaked customer she thought she could humiliate, was not humiliating a stranger. She was humiliating the man whose life was woven into May's. The man May had vowed to protect. And the instant Kara tipped that pitcher, she moved herself onto a chessboard where every piece had been placed long before she ever entered the game. So we return to the questions that matter. Who really controls this neighborhood? On the surface, it was landlords and business owners. But deeper down, the influence belonged to those with the money to buy silence, to raise rents, to reroute supply chains, to bend politicians to their will. Why was Elijah targeted? Because to Kara, he represented everything she thought she'd never have. Dignity, respect, the appearance of wealth. She struck out at him, thinking it would give her power. Instead, she put herself in the crosshairs of someone far more powerful than she could comprehend. And what did Kara think would happen? She thought Elijah would leave quietly, embarrassed, that the diners would laugh, then forget by morning. She thought her smirk would be the last word. What actually happened was something else entirely. Within 7 minutes, the room she thought she controlled would belong to someone else. Her laughter would be replaced by silence. And her mistake would become the city's problem. She was already inside, just not where you think. Elijah Ward did not see the world the way most people did. Where others saw buildings, he saw barriers. A ramp too steep, a doorway too narrow, a hallway that excluded the very people it was supposed to welcome. For Elijah, this was not paperwork. It was personal. His life had been shaped by spaces that told him, in 100 small ways, that he was an afterthought. And so he dedicated his career to making sure no one else felt invisible. May Ward knew how to play 2 games at once. In public, she was the philanthropist, donating millions, cutting ribbons at hospitals, building schools. But in private, whispers carried through every boardroom, every council chamber. She was more than generous. She was strategic. And people who crossed her learned quickly that gifts could turn into leverage. Kara Doyle lived in a world of notices and ultimatums. 29 years old, single mother, exhausted from double shifts and endless demands. Every day, she watched strangers spend more on wine than she earned in a week. And every night, she came home to silence broken only by debt collectors and reminders that she was running out of time. And when bitterness has nowhere to go, it waits. It waits for a target. The restaurant wasn't just a place to eat. It was a theater. Every polished glass and folded napkin was a prop in a performance built to remind its guests they were part of something exclusive. But the performance came with rules, and those rules did not favor everyone equally. T.J. Jensen never spoke outright. He didn't need to. His coded language was enough. And Kara, already cornered by her own life, carried those words like gasoline waiting for a spark. Devon Cole was May's shadow, her right hand, her eyes across the city. Where others saw shops and diners, Devon saw pieces on a chessboard. Some allies, some obstacles, all accounted for. Tonight's restaurant had already been marked, but no one there knew it yet. Kara didn't need truth. Rumors were enough. Gossip gave her the permission she craved. Each post was a spark, and each spark deepened her certainty that Elijah Ward didn't deserve her respect. In that moment, the fuse was lit. Elijah believed he was coming for dinner. Kara believed she was serving another customer. May Ward knew better. 3 lives already colliding in silence. And when the glass finally tipped, it would not just drench a jacket, It would drench an entire city in consequences. Elijah had eaten here before. Not often, but enough to know the... One sets down his fork slowly, sensing the tension. Some confrontations shout. Others whisper. Tonight, contempt spoke quietly. In a sideways glance. In a too-close pass. In a sentence thrown just loud enough to stain the air. Elijah remains still. His hand rests calmly on the rim of his wheel. His expression unreadable. Kara lifts a pitcher of ice water. Condensation drips down its spine, pooling at her hand. She tilts it over Elijah's table. The water arcs. Droplets explode against Elijah's navy fabric. Ice scatters like glass beads across his lap. The cold shocks through his cloth to his skin. A fork clatters to the marble. One phone rises, then another, lenses catching every detail. Elijah's eyes close for a heartbeat. His jaw tightens, but when he speaks, his voice is steady, almost gentle. You don't have to be cruel to be heard. Kara leans in, lips curling. Her voice is low, venomous. People like you always want to show. The last drops fall. A single cube lands with a loud plunk onto his untouched plate. Cruelty often pretends to be accidental. A slip, a spill. But the truth is written in the lean of her body, the curl of her lips, the sharpness in her whisper. This was no accident. This was intent. And intent leaves scars not on the body, but on the soul of a room. The restaurant freezes. Even the chandeliers seem to dim. Every witness waits to see how the man in the chair will respond. Elijah doesn't shout. He doesn't argue, nor does he demand. Instead, he reaches into his pocket, retrieves his phone, and types one word. The SUV idling across the street blinks its parking lights twice. A second vehicle mirrors from the opposite curb. A silent language. A signal answered. TJ Jensen stands over a bank of security feeds. Table 14, frozen in Tableau. His phone buzzes. It's Cole. He stares at the name, jaw tight, then presses silence. Invisible power doesn't arrive with sirens. It arrives in signals. 2 blinks in the dark. A call declined. A manager pretending nothing is wrong while his heartbeat gives him away. Back in the dining room, a server moves to mop, then stops. A hostess wrings her hands. The crying child is hushed by a mother whose eyes stay locked on Elijah. Elijah, calm as stone, unfolds a handkerchief. He dabs his hands, not his jacket. He folds the cloth again, neat and precise, laying it across his lap as though nothing has happened. He will not give her the spectacle she wants. Instead, he gives her silence. And silence, in a moment like this, is louder than rage. Elijah adjusts his wheels, pivots slightly. He does not look at Kara. He does not look at TJ, frozen in the office doorway. Instead, he reaches into his pocket once more. 2 crisp $100 bills slide onto the table beneath his untouched plate. Money is speech. And in this moment, his tip says everything. Dignity is not negotiable. Elijah wheels toward the door. The chime rings, 2 delicate notes, cutting through the frozen silence. The back of his chair rolls away. The glass door swings. Rain greets him like an ally. The SUV's rear door opens. A silhouette steps down. An umbrella tilts open, a canopy of shadow in the streetlight glow. The figure moves with precision, unhurried. Inside the restaurant, Kara stares. Her throat tightens though she doesn't know why. TJ watches from the office monitor, his muted phone vibrating again. It is Cole again. He doesn't pick up. In 7 minutes, a smirk becomes a mistake. A mistake becomes a signal. And a signal becomes the kind of consequence no one at table 14 could imagine. The umbrella tilts toward the restaurant door. Night slides into dawn. The city never fully sleeps, but the internet never sleeps at all. The phone video, 34 seconds long, travels faster than rainwater down a drain. By 2 a.m., it's on local feeds. By 6 a.m., it's stitched, subtitled, slowed, zoomed, annotated with red arrows. By noon, it's national. The clip is short, but the reaction is long, because everyone sees what they already believe. Nia Brooks, a veteran anchor, narrates in clipped tones over B-roll of the restaurant's exterior. Tonight, outrage spreads after a video shows a local server pouring ice water over a diner in a wheelchair. Some say the clip is staged. Others call it clear discrimination. Management has not released names, but the video continues to spread. The city splits itself into camps. Some insist it's theater. Some recognize it as a wound they've carried for years. Either way, the views count up like an odometer with no breaks. The same 34 seconds repeat with overlays. One slowed to frame by frame. One zoomed in on Kara's expression, one captioned with, "This wasn't an accident." By the time the morning rush ends, a 30-second video has become an argument about who belongs in which spaces and who decides. City Hall Annex. A corridor smells of coffee gone stale. A man in a rumpled suit adjusts his tie in the glass before stepping into an interview room. When a video divides a city, someone in plain shoes is sent to count the cracks. Detective Luis Ortega has done this before. He does not rush. He does not posture. He listens. He just asked for space. The stand lowered, the aisle cleared. It sounded normal. I heard someone whisper lawsuit. Don't know who. Didn't want to repeat it. A dishwasher sits across the table, hands raw from bleach water. He doesn't blink when he speaks. Management said, VIPs first. If you gotta move others, you move him. That's the rule. Always has been. TJ Jensen in a neatly pressed shirt. His lawyer sits just out of frame. TJ folds his hands, rehearsed. There was a heated exchange. Our policy is respect for all patrons. We've suspended the staff member in question. Pending review. He doesn't say Kara's name. He doesn't say what the dishwasher did. The lawyer's pen lies perfectly aligned with his notepad, a silent threat to keep statements narrow. Table 14. Elijah motionless. Kara leaning. The pour. The flinch of diners. Ortega rewinds, not to faces, but to hands. Kara's tilt. Elijah's stillness. TJ's phone vibrating. Cole, silenced. He notes what's there. He notes what isn't. Missing words tell their own story. Kara at the kitchen table, a calculator clicking against trembling fingers. Her bank app pings. Overdraft protection disabled, policy change. Bills don't bite on their own. Someone teaches them to. In TJ's office, he phones his liquor distributor. The rep is apologetic, voice syrup smooth. Inventory constraints. Order canceled. We'll reevaluate in 3 months. TJ slams the phone down, jaw tight. A restaurant lives and dies on its suppliers. Tonight, his supplier finds inventory suddenly scarce. The city turns its gears. But whose hand moves the crank? Still with us? Type, I'm here, and your state in the comments. Who do you think is really in control? May, TJ, or someone else? A pause, an invitation. Silence becomes suspense. A glossy flyer circulates online and on neighborhood boards. Patrons Association, protecting dining standards. The group threatens boycotts. Its mission statement is vague. Its contact email leads nowhere. Noise is easy to manufacture. It looks like outrage, sounds like order. But when you trace the return address, there is no hand to shake. Just a box that fills, then empties. May Ward at a food bank opening. Cameras flash. She kneels to hand a box to a young mother. A reporter shouts, "Any comment on the restaurant video?" She smiles, waves, and moves on. Those waiting for her strike wait in vain. May Ward does not swing in daylight. She feeds the hungry. She gives the cameras groceries, not fury. At night, the restaurant closed. Chairs stacked upside down on tables. An SUV glides past, brake lights glowing red against glass. They linger, then vanish into the night. Devin Cole leaves signatures in silence. A brake light. A pause. A glance at the door he doesn't enter. Ortega in the alley behind the restaurant. Rain pools under a bent gutter. He crouches, flashlight sweeping. He lifts a burner phone, bagging it carefully. Back at his desk, the screen lights just enough to show 3 numbers dialed, nothing more. In a city of millions, silence chooses only 3 voices. 3 numbers. No names. No chatter. Just 3 lines, all called the same night. Ortega writes them in a neat column on his legal pad. He taps his pencil twice, staring beyond the paper. Find the owner of those numbers, and you learn who spun the web. Follow them, and you learn who holds it. Detective Ortega leans back in his office chair, fluorescent light buzzing faintly overhead. A file lies open. Not a police file, but a thick, tabbed binder stamped with legal seals. The man who sat silent under a cascade of ice water wasn't a victim waiting for pity. He wasn't a lawsuit chaser, or a man hoping for a headline. He was something else entirely. Something far more dangerous to a place like TJ's. Elijah Ward was an accessibility compliance consultant. His job wasn't to sit quietly. His job was to document every obstacle, every code violation, every building that forgot people like him existed and hold them accountable. And his reports weren't suggestions. They carried the weight of the law, with fines that could shutter businesses and lawsuits that could outlast an owner's career. TJ sits across from Ortega. Ortega slides the binder across. The manager flips pages. His jaw tenses as recognition sets in. You remember this file. Your restaurant was cited months ago. You ignored it. And the man you let your staff humiliate? He wrote it. TJ's hand clenches into a fist before he forces it open again. Elijah Ward wasn't a soft target. He was a paper trail in human form. His silence that night wasn't surrender. It was calculation. Because he knew spilled water evaporates. But written violations? They remain. Memo dated 2 days after the incident. Read aloud over still images of May at community events. No illegal moves. No strong-arm tactics. Fix the neighborhood the right way, or we don't touch it. People whispered May Ward had unleashed hell. That the rent hikes, the canceled orders, the frozen accounts were her revenge. But the memos told another story. May didn't tighten the leash. Instead, she shortened it. Her command was discipline. If the world tilted in her favor, it would tilt within the law. And yet, the gears kept turning. So if May wasn't grinding them forward, who was? Her lieutenants circled, but did not strike. May Ward's silence was louder than violence. She stayed clean, as she always had, which left the question hanging in fluorescent air. Who, then, was pulling the strings? Detective Ortega at his desk, scribbling 3 numbers on a legal pad. He cross-checks them on his computer. Each hit appears like a drumbeat. The phone didn't scream May Ward. It whispered something smaller, but just as corrosive. A quiet corruption ring. Middlemen who knew how to keep doors shut, wallets empty, favors delayed. A distributor who decided which restaurants thrived. A landlord who decided which tenants suffocated. A city aide who decided which complaints were heard, and which disappeared into manila folders never opened again. Council aide closes his blinds, whispering into a cheap burner phone. He pockets an envelope thick with cash before returning to his desk, a smile plastered on his face. Not May's empire, not Devon's muscle, but small men with small powers, who stitched themselves together to look larger. And yet, their names explained only part of the puzzle. Ortega's eyes narrow at the call log. One more entry glows faintly. There was a 4th call, the last one, made minutes before the pitcher poured. And that call went straight to TJ Jensen. It wasn't an accident. It was an impulse. It was staged. Kara, days earlier, reads the texts, her face lit blue in the dark. She chews her lip, then sighs. She doesn't see cruelty. She sees instructions. Kara Morrison wasn't a lone bad apple. She was the blunt edge of a system sharpened by management. Every sigh, every eye roll, every staged accident. Not personal attitudes, but company policy. She poured water not because she wanted to humiliate, but because humiliation had been normalized. It was in the script. You stacked the dominoes. Then you handed a waitress the first one. TJ freezes. His lawyer clears his throat, but says nothing. The silence in the room was heavier than denial. The truth wasn't that one woman lost her temper. The truth was a theater designed for exclusion, rehearsed nightly, sanctioned from the top. And all it took to collapse that theater was 34 seconds of water hitting cloth. The story that began with a single pitcher now pressed down on everyone who touched it. And the first to break was Kara Morrison. Kara spoke, voice cracking, words tumbling out. I was drowning. Rent overdue. Mom's medicine, $4,000 a month. My kid's surgery waitlisted. I hated every face that walked in here with money I'll never see. And TJ, he told me. He told all of us. Keep the undesirables moving. Don't let them linger. That's what he said. That's why I never said that, TJ interrupted. My instructions were simple, efficiency, rotation, no discrimination. If she twisted that, it's on her. Lawyer glanced at him, then away, eyes narrowing for a split second. Not denial. Recognition. One voice drowning in guilt. Another, denying oxygen to the truth. And in the silence between them, a city waited to see which story would stick. Kara's face was blotchy with tears, and TJ's blank stare was under fluorescent glare. 2 halves of the same chain snapping in different places. Detective Ortega leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Elijah wheels forward slowly, his eyes calm, voice steady. Elijah Ward could have sued, could have crushed them with fines, with lawyers, with headlines. But his power had never been about punishment. It was about doors, who could pass through them, and who was barred. Elijah speaks, not with anger, but with quiet gravity. When I was 10, every school day started with someone laughing while I tried to drag myself upstairs. When I was 20, job interviews ended before they began because I couldn't even fit through the door. Every slammed door, every joke, every whisper, it built a wall around me. I learned to break it brick by brick. You poured water. But the truth is, people poured worse every day of my life. And I survived. Kara weeps openly. No script, no lawyer beside her. She stares at him, words broken, almost childlike. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought if I made you small, I'd feel bigger. But all I did was make myself smaller. I hurt you. I hurt your wife. And I don't know how to fix it. Elijah looks at her, steady, then answers like a teacher, not an enemy. Accountability is a door. You can open it, or be crushed when it closes. He wheels back. Ortega scribbles the line down. Kara buries her face in her hands. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't revenge. It was something rarer, a chance. In a boardroom, polished wood table, May Ward sits immaculate, eyes sharp. Devin Cole looms behind her, hands clasped like stone. Across from them, TJ, sweating through his collar. Papers rustle as May slides a folder across the table. Inside the folder were contracts, terms. A buyout offer stamped in black and white. May spoke with controlled, cold precision. Sell. Renovate to code. Hire from the block. Or watch the fines erase your profit. TJ's lips part, ready to protest. May cuts him off with a slight raise of her hand. Calm, regal, absolute. You built a culture on humiliation. You train people to weaponize service. That ends. With or without you. Devin leans forward just enough for TJ to catch the glint in his eye. No threats spoken. None needed. It wasn't blood. It wasn't bullets. It was paper. Contracts sharp enough to slice an empire apart. May Ward never shouted. She never struck. She simply laid out two paths. Sell with dignity or drown in fines. TJ stares at the contract, his pen shaking. The lawyer whispers. The sound of ink on paper seals his fate. Months later, Kara appears in uniform. Not glamorous, but steady. She carries plates carefully to a table where Elijah and May sit side by side. She pauses, heart hammering, then places the plates down. Elijah looks up at her. For the first time, a small, genuine smile. The ramp angle. You adjusted it right this time. Good work. Kara swallows hard, nodding, her eyes wet but hopeful. For once, not ashamed, just simply human. May observing the scene, face inscrutable. Then, slowly, she lifts her glass in quiet acknowledgement. Mercy didn't erase the harm. It didn't forget the water, the whispers, the humiliation, but it redirected it. And in that redirection, an entire block found new footing. A restaurant that once excluded now welcomed. A waitress once complicit, now learning. And a man who had carried stairs and slammed doors his entire life. Left behind more than fines. He left behind change. Justice did not come with shouting. It came with choices. And when choices became doors, the city learned who could open them, and who would be crushed if they refused. And in the end, 7 minutes of water reshaped 7 decades of stone. The water dried. The contracts signed. The city moved on. But we're left with questions. Questions that don't fade so easily. Was justice served without revenge? Some will say Elijah's choice was mercy. Others will say it let cruelty escape its true sentence. Would you have spotted the red flags that night? Signs were everywhere. But how many diners would have recognized the play before the pitcher tipped? And if you thought this was measured power, wait until you see the case where a fake charity took over a police precinct from the inside. This story was about more than humiliation, more than contracts. It was about dignity and the cost of accountability. If it moved you, share it with someone who believes in justice done the right way. Subscribe to our channel for more true life twists, and share this with someone who cares about dignity and accountability. What's your take on this? Was justice really served? Comment below. I'm reading every single one. Also, if you want more stories like this, check out the video on screen right now. You won't believe what happens in that one.